We've got some real actual Padres news to talk about. Some real baseball developments over the course of the last couple weeks, week and a half, certainly the last few days. Mike Shildt actually has a coaching staff, which is very exciting. We got to hear from Shildt about that and a couple new arms, intriguing arms in the bullpen, and excited to discuss this all with one of our favorite guests, the always informative Kyle Glaser of Baseball America. So excited about that. Derek is enjoying a week off around the holidays. So it'll be me and Kyle chatting Padres, coaching staff, bullpen, and excited to get Kyle's thoughts just on this offseason as a whole. I've spoken to him a little bit, but not on the pod, just this shift that this offseason has brought. So we'll get into all that. Thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. They are constantly updating their menu, great food, great beer list, and awesome place to catch a game. What's going on right now? We've got the NFL last week of the NFL regular season, NFL playoffs coming up. PGA Tour season starting to kick off. We'll get the Farmers Insurance Open here starting soon. College basketball, Aztecs, obviously, they're starting to kind of hit their stride a little bit. So if there's a game that you want to watch, place to hang out with family, enjoy good food, good drinks, OG's is a great place to do that. Thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. All right, without further ado, the welcome music. No time to waste today. We've got a lot to talk about and a guest who is always a wealth of information and insight and kind enough to join us on short notice in the midst of a busy day. You carved out some time for us, and we always appreciate that. Baseball America's Kyle Glaser, San Diego guy who we always love to catch up with. Happy New Year, happy holidays. How have the last few weeks treated you and the family?
A happy New Year to you too. It's been good. Just got a little bit of downtime, spent some time with my wife, my 2.5-year-old daughter, and it's definitely nice. We got the prospect handbook sent off to the printers December 22nd it was. That's obviously always a big lift. So getting that out the door was certainly a big weight off all our shoulders, and just was able to kind of relax for a week, and now right back at it.
So it was good that we got you after December 22nd because it would have been maybe a little bit more difficult. I think you and I connected around the winter meetings because I wanted some of your perspective on the Soto deal and all that. But I know that is it's a large project and a busy time for you.
Yeah. The month of December is pretty crazy. I think it's one of those things where people on the outside assume, oh, during the season you're busy. Obviously, carrying on through the World Series, which I cover every year, it's certainly hectic. But it doesn't end when the regular season ends because then we're diving into the prospect handbook, which is a bear of a project. So something that we take a lot of pride in, something that we enjoy doing, but it is a lot of work. So even though November and December are the off season and you'd think it'd be the least busy time, it's actually some of the busiest times of year for us at BA, just putting that thing together.
And you're always on top of this, but probably an exercise that could benefit us from a Padres perspective because there's always a bunch of guys that I'm sure come up through the course of that exercise that are relevant to the Padres fan base and their interests, especially going forward into this season where maybe that second wave of the hot lava that we heard about a number of years ago is going to hopefully arrive and hopefully have an impact on this team. To what extent, to be determined, but I'm sure we'll discuss that. I wanted to start with you just kind of big picture, because this has been such a shifting of the landscape, the Padres landscape this offseason. A lot has happened. Obviously, the tragic passing of Peter Seidler, will be felt going forward, no doubt. I think even apart from that, this team was going to the organization was going to change how they're doing business a little bit, scale back a little bit from where they were the last couple of years. And I give them credit for kind of maxing it out and seeing what they could sustain and then saying, okay, this is where we kind of need to level out. And that's brought major changes. Obviously, managerial spot aside from that, but then Juan Soto and kind of figuring out how to assemble this roster under those new financial constraints. When you take into account everything that's happened, just kind of your assessment of what's gone on and what this means for the Padres and what we can expect from them. Again, kind of 30,000-foot view going forward.
Yeah, so we still have to see what moves they make the rest of this offseason. As currently constructed, this is a team that has a lot of holes. Again, you still have some star power. You still have Fernando Tatis. You still have Manny Machado. You still have Xander Bogaerts. Ha-Seong Kim really took a step forward last year. You still have Darvish and Joe Musgrove at the front of the rotation. So you still have a lot of players who are capable of carrying a team. But as we all know, and as we've seen with the Padres in particular, you can't win over the course of a 162 game season with two or three great starting pitchers and four or five great hitters in the lineup. You need to be balanced. You have to have weapons throughout your entire roster. And that's been the Padres' Achilles heel fairly consistently under the AJ Preller regime, just not having good enough depth, having too many holes at the bottom of the lineup, not having enough rotation depth, things of that nature. And looking at where this team is right now, they needed to pull off the Juan Soto trade to clear out some payroll space and also get some of that pitching depth that they did not have in the organization that was going to be able to help them in 2024. So focusing on getting arms from the Yankees, major league ready arms in terms of Michael King, Johnny Brito, Randy Vasquez. That was smart. That was what they should have targeted, even though those guys might not have the biggest upside. Drew Thorpe, college draftee, got to AA last year, needs some more time in the minors, but you could certainly see him getting up to the big leagues this year and really establishing himself next year. So getting good young arms who have major league experience that are going to be able to help the team now in the immediate future, as well as the long-term future, was the right way to go about it once you established the Juan Soto trade needed to happen. That all being said, you still have a lot of holes in this lineup, and you look at how much payroll space is left. It's hard to kind of figure out how they're going to add everything they need in terms of the back rotation, 3 or 4 spots in the lineup, some more bullpen help, and say, yeah, they're ready to compete for a playoff spot in the National League. I do think this could be a transition year where you let some of those younger prospects that are promising in the minors, but have yet to really play much above AA. Most of them just have partial seasons at AA. Let them get a full year in the upper levels, AA, AAA, maybe make their debuts in September. And then in 2025, you take that really good young wave of talent that's come up through your farm system and had time to develop, combine it with the major league players you have, which again, there's some good players you can add on to. You might have a good team in 2025, but I do think the way things are shaping up right now, 2024 looks like it's going to be more of a transition year.
Yeah, and like from a payroll standpoint, Eric Grupner had some things to say that kind of like ruffled the fan base a little bit about where they were before and where they are now and all that. But I thought it was mostly fine.
Yeah.
And look, if you're only spending 200 million as opposed to like 240 million, like you still can put together a competent baseball team. You can still put together a playoff contending baseball team. Now the Padres have a little bit more to navigate because of some of those big contracts. But I feel like as a fan base, like it's fun to play with like the rich folks for a couple years, and they didn't get as much out of it as they maybe should have. But I think they still landed in the spot where year in, year out, you should have enough resources to have like a respectable playoff contending baseball team. Am I wrong?
Oh, absolutely. Look, $200 million is more than enough of a payroll to contend for the postseason and World Series titles. 180 million is. If you're in the top half of Major League payroll on opening day, and I've studied this, you're fine. There are a lot of teams, even if you're, 13th, 14th, you'll be in it. It's better to be top 10 in opening day payroll when you look at since 1995, the start of the wild card era, 20 of the 29 World Series champions had an opening day payroll in the top 10. So, but even if you're 7th, 8th, ninth, you're fine. 200 million is more than enough to compete. The issue is how you allocate that 200 million. Are you spending it wisely? And we've seen the Padres hand out some contracts that have been prohibitive. Again, you talk about, I've talked to you guys about this. Xander Bogaerts is a really good player. He was not what the Padres needed last year. It was not the best allocation of that money. Jake Cronenworth's extension was very, very premature. There was no need to do that. And now it's put them in a little bit of a bind as he's regressed. He really is not an everyday first baseman, and there's not much trade value there right now. So that's put them in a spot. Extending Darvish into his age 40 season, certainly concerning as well. There's a lot of contracts the Padres have handed out that have put them in this position. But in a vacuum, $200 million is more than high enough of a payroll to fill a World Series caliber roster. Even 180 million is, but you have to spend it wisely. And that's where the Padres have fallen short at times.
Should say, if you're joining us live on YouTube, get in the chat, let us know your thoughts and questions, and we will throw them Kyle's way on this episode. What was there anything else you mentioned? Kind of doing that exercise that piqued my interest. You
Yep.
mentioned what 20 of 29 were in top 10.
Yep.
It seems like the threshold is midway. Is there anything else that was particularly illuminating about that lesson? Because now, this is like real life stuff for Padres fans. They were playing way down, way down that list where they
Yeah.
really had no chance. We knew they had no chance, but since
Yeah.
like 2019 and going forward, really 2020, they've been in kind of different tax brackets, so to speak. Anything else jump out to you as you kind of went through that exercise?
Yeah, I've written about this a few points over the years. I kind of update it with the most recent World Series champions. So in the wild card era, 1995 to present, as I mentioned, 20 of the 29 champions opened the year top 10 opening day payroll. 26 of the 29 World Series champions were in the top half of payroll on opening day. So only 3 teams in the wild card era have ever won a World Series opening the year in the bottom half of payroll. And 2 of those teams made big midseason trades that put them in the top half by the end of the year. The 2017 Astros acquiring Justin Verlander, the 2015 Royals acquiring Johnny Cueto and Ben Zobrist. The only team since 1995 that has won a World Series with a bottom 10 payroll was the 2003 Marlins. If you don't put yourself in the top half of Major League payroll, more often than not, and I would say almost always, you're not a World Series contender. And there's a lot of darlings out there, the A's, the Rays, the Brewers, but you look at what happens in the postseason, they rarely have postseason success. And a lot of it's because there comes a point where you can mix and match and platoon all you want. Once you get to the postseason, you're facing the big dogs. You're facing the teams that do everything as well as you do and have better talent. You're not going to go very far. There's no real way around it that to acquire both of these stars and depth needed to win a World Series costs money. Now, you don't have to spend $350 million, and Lord knows there are plenty of teams who have spent lots of money and fallen flat. You can kind of sum it up as spending money does not guarantee you a championship, but the teams that win championships almost always spend money. If you're not in the top half of payroll, you're not really a World Series contender, and putting yourself in the top 10 in payroll on opening day, that's where you really want to be a true World Series contender.
It's a good place to be. That's good, like, context and perspective that, like, you say these things from my perspective. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is true, but have somebody that actually goes and looks at these things and sees kind of that top 10 as that benchmark. That's helpful. Given that they're in this place, they're having to kind of get creative and go to different parts of the world to kind of fill out that roster. And we've seen that now in the last couple weeks with Yuki Matsui and Usa Go. You wrote about these guys for Baseball America, did you not?
Yep.
What's the takeaway? What'd you already know? What'd you learn through the process? Once they were kind of linked to the Padres.
Yeah, I've written and reported on the players coming out of Asia, Japan, South Korea for us at Baseball America for a few years now. And this year there's a big, big, big class, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Jung-Hoo Lee, obviously the headliners, but these were 2 solid relievers who you absolutely looked at and said, yeah, they can help a big league team. I think when you look at Yuki Matsui and Woo-Suk Go, first and foremost, these were 2 of the best closers in their respective leagues. Yuki Matsui in Japan, Woo-Suk Go in Korea. They were really the elite closers of their leagues there. In terms of what they project to be in the majors, it's more low to mid leverage relief as opposed to high leverage relief or closers. Yuki Matsui is a smaller lefty, 5'8", 165 pounds, soaking wet, max effort type of guy. Fastball's low 90s, touches 95, but it plays up a little bit. He's got solid secondary stuff. Again, he can face both lefties and righties, and you feel good about, okay, throw him in a big spot in the 6th, maybe the 7th. He has the weapons to get hitters from both sides of the plate out. His control was good last year. Historically, it's been an issue. Again, when you look at what his stuff and control is compared to the stuff and control of major league closers, it's not at the same level, but he should be a useful reliever. And look, Lord knows a lot of games are lost in the 6th and 7th inning. So having a good reliever who can get you through there, who can get out hitters from both sides of the plate as a lefty, that's a valuable addition. Woo-Suk Go has a really good fastball. In Korea, there's not a lot of velocity. He's 93, 95, up to 98, and that thing plays. You can really see it explode through the zone. It's an above-average fastball that should play in the major leagues. Big thing with him is his secondaries are just super inconsistent. And look, to be that elite high leverage reliever, it's big fastball, dirty slider, or dominant changeup. He doesn't have the secondary that you love yet. So right now he's seen as more of a low leverage kind of guy. He had some injury issues last year. Control's been a little iffy. And that's why you saw it's a 2-year, $4.5 million deal. I mean, that's the dollar amount you get for a low leverage reliever. And you hope that he can come over, work with Ruben Niebla, and maybe hone one of his secondaries a little bit. Then you've got a guy who's up to 98 with a usable secondary. Maybe he can move into a mid-leverage relief role. So neither of these guys are going to take over for Josh Hader as the closer. Neither of these guys are going to be superstars, maybe like they were in their home countries, but they should be useful players who help the Padres and give them some relief depth, which you need.
Okay, so that's important because I think we're kind of wondering, what does this mean for that closer spot?
Yeah.
Where, Josh Hader's been really good,
Yeah.
Fairly specific in terms of how he wants to be used, which I know has been a point of frustration amongst the fan base. But I think, in hearing about these guys, there's some curiosity. Okay, could one of them be the answer there? Um, is the answer in like, would you guess it's Robert Suarez
No.
or okay, so, or are they bringing somebody else in to maybe kind of be that lights out guy? Because Suarez, we after 22, we thought he could potentially be that guy. And when he signed that contract, we thought, okay, the successor to Josh Hader. And then last year happened and the health things and this and that. But you're under the belief that going into the season, Suarez is your ninth inning guy.
Based on the current roster construction, yeah, of the guys that are currently on this roster, Robert Suarez is the guy that would be their closer. Now, do they go out and add someone in free agency? Do they make a trade? I think that's certainly possible. Again, given Robert Suarez's health, given the fact he hasn't proven himself in that role, you can argue whether or not it's a good thing that he is their best closer option right now. And that would be an indication of maybe that they should go make another bullpen addition. But they have bigger issues in the lineup. They have bigger issues in the rotation. You can live with Robert Suarez potentially as your closer, and maybe you mix and match depending on the matchup. You have guys like Steven Wilson and Tom Cosgrove who have been effective. You have Go and Matsui. Maybe you mix and match and play it situationally. I think right now the Padres need to allocate the remaining funds they have towards improving this lineup, towards improving the starting rotation. And, the bullpen, this is not going to be a lights out bullpen, but you're hoping that the combination of Ruben Niebla helping these guys out, playing in Petco Park, having a lot of, road games in pitcher friendly parks, that's serviceable and usable, and they can, put their resources toward other parts of the roster that need a lot more attention right now.
Because you're talking Suarez, you're talking Go, you're talking Matsui, of the Pedro Avila, Johnny Brito, the Vasquez
Yeah.
King group. Obviously, you'd hope maybe two of them end up in the rotation, like best
Yeah.
chance, like obviously King, and then hopefully one of those guys maybe Avila. But then you think, okay, there's potential bullpen options there: Cosgrove, Enyo de los Santos. You've got Steven Wilson hopefully coming back healthy. Amongst others. Again, it's not maybe as convincing a group on paper as what you had going into last year when Luis Garcia came off a really good season and Suarez came off a really good season and Hader and Wilson had done some good things.
Yeah.
Tom Cosgrove was a nice surprise last year. I guess you kind of already answered the question. Not necessarily a lights out group. Should Padres fans be comfortable with this group, or is this one of those types of situations where it's might be white knuckling our way through a lot of seventh, eighth, and ninth innings?
There's the potential for this to be a bullpen that makes you sweat a little bit. Again, they don't have that lights out end of game guy. There's not a ton of proven experience setup wise. I mean, the Padres lost a lot this offseason in the bullpen. You look at obviously Josh Hader being a free agent, hasn't signed yet, but you look at Nick Martinez, you look at Luis Garcia. Garcia, Martinez, and Hader led the Padres in appearances last year. Those were the three. They're all gone, assuming Hader signs elsewhere. There's a lot of experience that has left this bullpen. And I think it's something where, again, is this bullpen what you want it to be for a potential contending team? No, it's not. But the Padres have bigger issues they need to address and focus their resources on.
What's the because we heard a lot about it with Ha-Sung Kim. What does the transition generally look like, having studied these guys and seen, similar comps through the years, for a pitcher, for an arm, for a middle relief type? Do you go into it expecting that there's going to be some growing pains, or that, and you mentioned, like, goes velocity, like that should play, whereas if you're a hitter, you don't see a whole lot of goes, you know what I mean, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Between those two, should we expect maybe an adventurous first couple months, or do they look like themselves pretty early on?
Yeah, so look, there's always a big adjustment. You're moving halfway across the world. You're getting used to new routines, new coaches, new players. You don't speak the language. So I think there are significant adjustments that come from a lifestyle perspective that I think we shouldn't underestimate. At the same time, the transition for position players is typically a much longer process than it is for pitchers, especially from Japan. NPB is the best level of baseball in the world. It's not Major League Baseball. Yuki Matsui has shown the ability to get hitters out there. I think we'll see pretty early on that he knows how to get hitters out. He knows how to use his stuff. Again, he's got 3 usable pitches that will help him. It's not like he's, a one pitch guy with a great fastball or a great splitter. The fastball's good, the split's good, the slider's actually pretty good. Um, you know, Strikes are a little bit of an issue, and make no mistake, he's a 1 inning max effort kind of guy, but he has the stuff that should play in the major leagues right away. Woo-Suk Go, again, the fastball should play. You really want to see him hone a secondary pitch while he's here. He shows you flashes with the breaking ball, but it's not as consistent as you'd like. Again, there are times where the curveball's there, but consistency is key. If you throw one good curveball and 3 bad ones, it's not going to be effective in the major league. So I think Matsui should be effective pretty quickly. Go also should be solid. Again, though, we're talking about the roles for them, right? We're not talking about them being 8th and 9th inning guys out the gate. We're talking about 5th and 6th inning, maybe 6th and 7th inning. So lower leverage. They should have the stuff that should help them be effective relatively quickly. And look, maybe they grow into more as they gain confidence. Maybe they really click with Ruben Niebla, and maybe they exceed their projections and they do end up being able to pitch, 7th and 8th. We'll see. But I would say right now the overall consensus is Go is more of a straight low leverage guy, and Matsui is more of a low to mid leverage type.
You got to enjoy Mike Shilt's Zoom on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I don't think you and I have had a chance to talk about Mike Shildt. I mean, it's so much has happened over the last couple months. It seems like Mike Shilt's been the manager forever. It seems like Bob Melvin was ages ago. What do you think of Mike Shildt?
Yeah, I really do think that was the right pick for the Padres. Look, Mike Shildt got a raw deal in St. Louis. He did a great job there. He's a really good manager. He's a really good baseball mind. He has the trust from his players. He came up through the minor leagues. He put in the years. He put in the time. He has a ton of institutional knowledge about the game and what players need to get better and how different personality types respond. A lot of things that get overlooked by certain clubs that are overly analytical and just want to focus on a coach who can platoon and do matchups the way they want. Mike Shilt's a really, really good baseball man and a really good baseball mind. And I think for the Padres, given the experience he's gained with the organization, I just think it was the right pick. He's not a guy who's going to get you super fired up. He has some fiery moments like every manager, but I think it's just, again, you get a guy who has proven he can manage major leaguers and stars. He did that in St. Louis with Paul Goldschmidt and the like. He has shown an ability to help younger players get better in transition. That's from his player development background. I think he was a good hire given the circumstances. Obviously, option A is you want to keep Bob Melvin. He's one of the best managers in the game. But once he decided he wanted to go to San Francisco, I think Benji Gill is going to be a great manager in the major leagues when he gets his chance. I thought the Padres absolutely did the right thing interviewing him. But I do think Mike Shildt was the right call. And I do think he's a good manager who, again, there's going to be limits on this roster. And I don't think that should be held against him. But overall, I thought he was the right hire.
A couple interesting tidbits that came out, when they announced the coaching staff and when he had a chance to kind of explain it. I think the two things that jumped out, okay, no bench coach,
Yeah.
kind of going with a different configuration there. And then you mention, his minor league player development background, and he clearly has he values that. That's how he came up.
Yeah.
And he seems to value that in others, and the work ethic and the years that kind of go into that, and then rewarding that. We'll start with the kind of the bench coach thing. It sounds nice when he explains it. But in the event that like he gets, he catches the flu and can't, manage a couple games or gets tossed, seems like it'll work out. Having I should get all the names straight.
Ryan Barba, their Major League field corner, who I actually got to know Ryan very, very well. He was a hitting coach and then eventually a manager at Inland Empire in the Angels organization. And my previous years working at the Riverside Press Enterprise, I got to know him, and being out here in SoCal doing a lot of work in the California League, got to know him really well over the years in the Angels organization. Look, I mean, I think it's certainly a unique setup. I think in a perfect world, you would like to have a bench coach with major league coaching experience, going with a major league field coordinator setup who has managed in the minor leagues but not the major leagues is certainly a unique choice. If you're asking me personally, I don't love trying to reinvent the wheel of coaching. We saw the Giants do it, and it just became a bit of a cluster and a disaster, I think. It's been kind of crazy how we've seen coaching staffs balloon and assistants to the assistant hitting coach type of deals. I think certainly it's a unique setup. I'm not going to sit here and say I have full-throated belief that it'll work, but we'll see. I think the Padres have clearly decided they want to try something new. If it works, great. I think it's a good thing that they are bringing up a lot of the coaches who have been in the minor leagues in this organization. I think it's really important to reward good coaches. Sometimes organizations, they'll say, oh, you're a great coach in the minor leagues, we're going to keep you down there, you're too valuable. And that kind of kills motivation. It sets a bad precedent for your ability to hire other coaches that are really, really high quality. So I think the fact that they're bringing up, really, they've done it over the last few years. Morgan Burkhart was a minor league coach for a long time, did a great job. Now he's been on the major league staff for a while. I think that's good. I think it's healthy. I like seeing them bring those guys up and reward them for a job well done in the minor leagues. Just in terms of the configuration, not having a traditional bench coach and having, Shildt talked about in the event he does get tossed, Ryan Barber would be his replacement. I think, and again, it's nothing against Ryan Barber, who I know and respect and like. I just think you'd feel a little more comfortable having a bench coach with major league experience be the guy who takes over in the event something like that happens.
Now, this is where this gets even more confusing because, and I might have this wrong, but I think he designated two different guys. So, like, when he's talking about Barba, I think he was talking to he talked about like spring training, game prep, that sort of thing. But he almost made it sound like Esposito would be the one doing kind of the in-game strategy stuff.
Yeah.
And so like playing the chess match within so I mean that's where it's like you have two guys, one that's like out of game kind of bench coach duties, but the other is like in-game bench coach duties. Obviously Niebla's covering the pitching staff.
Yeah.
But it seems like what he wants to avoid is, he talked about somebody getting pinch hitters and pinch runners ready, but then also paying attention to what's going on in the field and this and that. That makes sense, but you also wonder, like, okay, if this is how it's been done for for generations, then maybe that's the case for the reason. I don't know.
Again, I think a lot of it's just going to come down to interpersonal dynamics within the coaching staff. There's a lot of new faces. There's a lot of guys who haven't worked together before. So anytime you have a non-traditional arrangement, again, a lot of it's just going to come down to how well do these guys work together. And we're going to find out the answer to that. If they work together smoothly and seamlessly, and it's a really cohesive coaching staff, we're probably not going to know the difference from the outside looking in. But the risk you take with, okay, we have a lot of new faces and unfamiliar roles, and roles that traditionally are held under one title. We're now splitting those responsibilities. There can be, for lack of a better word, turf wars. There can be personality clashes. So I think this is where it's going to come down to, Mike Shildt as the manager making sure his coaching staff is running smoothly. I think a lot of times we talk about managers and making sure the clubhouse is running smoothly, which is absolutely a huge, huge, huge critical part of their job. But something that doesn't get talked about enough is, coaches are humans too. There's times where egos are wounded. There's times where people are feeling like they're not being given the latitude needed to do their jobs. There's times where they feel like their toes are being stepped on. And it's important for a manager to smooth that over too. So, Mike Shildt, a great people person. And I think this is where you kind of trust him. And with this configuration, it's going to be on him to make sure everyone knows their assignments, everyone knows their roles, and make sure there's no personality clashes and the interpersonal dynamics are as healthy as they need to be.
Well, it's not like there's ever been any sort of power struggles or awkward interpersonal dynamics within the Padres clubhouse. I mean, that's never happened before, so I'm sure it'll be perfectly fine. I think like that's interesting and a little bit quirky. I think what seems more important is what you had mentioned, the guys with minor league experience and minor league ties that are now going to be in the dugout. Pat O'Sullivan, coach hitters in Double A San Antonio last year. Barba, as you mentioned, minor league infield coordinator last couple years. Mike McCoy, he's coached Lake Elsinore, he's coached Tri-City, within the last few years. Worked with hitters. It doesn't seem, and I mean, Shildt even said so much, not a coincidence that this is happening now, given that you've got these guys, Jackson Merrill, Ethan Salas down the road, Jacob Marcy, Graham Pauly, among others that hopefully will arrive and be impactful pieces. Um, how savvy of a move is that? How beneficial can that be to some of these young guys stepping up? Not just getting to the bigs, but this got to be a fairly intimidating clubhouse. I mean, Manny's over there, and Tatis is over here, and Bogarts, and strong personalities and big time type players. It's not like an Orioles situation where everybody's kind of young, and there's not like a bunch of proven all-star, potential future MVP types. How smart a move was that to incorporate some of those guys into this coaching staff, knowing who could arrive?
Yeah, I thought it was really smart, and that is what jumped out to me immediately when I saw the release announcing who all the coaches were, and that's why I asked Mike Shildt that question in the press conference about, how much of this was to kind of align things for when these young players come up. Look, given the Padres situation where they are financially, the contracts they have, a lot's going to be riding on getting their current crop of minor leaguers into the major leagues and be productive there. And the first part of that is giving them time to develop. None of these guys are ready to be on an opening day roster next year. They probably should spend most of next year in the minors, maybe get a second half call up. And 2025 is really when they become established major leaguers. And part of that is making sure when they get there, the support systems are in place for them to be successful. And having coaches who have worked with them before, having coaches who know them, having coaches they have relationships with, that's only going to help. So I did see this as a little bit of we're preparing for when these guys are ready to help ease the landing as much as possible. And I thought that was smart. So I do think that the coaching hires align well with the organization's long-term goals and timelines. Again, is that going to be the one thing that makes one of these guys a superstar versus a bust? No, of course not. There's all sorts of factors that are going to play into it, but this helps. And I do think it was smart on the Padres' behalf, both from, again, okay, making sure that when these young hitters are ready, there's familiar faces there that can work with them. But also, again, just having that healthy culture of, hey, if you do a good job in the minors, we will promote you again. That's a healthy culture you need to do for players, but also coaches, because if you have coaches that are doing a great job and you never do anything with them, there's a lot of frustration. They leave for other organizations, and it makes it harder to attract good coaches. You really want to have that reputation of, hey, every coach wants to coach in the major leagues. No one dreams of being an A-ball coach. So if you do a good job, we'll bring you up. That's a healthy thing to do, and something that will help them attract good young coaches in the future as well.
A lot of fans saw this and thought, okay, great, the youth movement is on. This happens. This guarantees that we're going to see all these guys within the next couple years. I think we'll see some of them. Is it safe to assume that that is an indication that they are committed to making use of this crop of young players to benefit the big league team? We are still talking AJ Preller, and if the right deal, presents itself, I don't think he would hesitate to. I think there's certain untouchables. I wouldn't expect the Salas move. Maybe Lesko, Snelling. There might be others, but um, should fans see this and think, okay, yes, these guys that we've gotten excited about and really kind of gotten to know and introduce ourselves to over the course of the last year plus, like, this is happening. We're going to see them.
I wouldn't go that far. Again, we are talking about AJ Preller. We're talking about a front office that is very, very, very determined to win. And if there's a move they feel like will help them do that, they have shown a willingness to do that. And you talk about untouchables. There is no untouchable. Not even Nathan Salas. Mackenzie Gore and CJ Abrams were untouchable. Guess what? They got traded. So I think it's something where it's going to depend situationally on how the team plays this year, how these prospects are performing, what the overall, situation is in terms of, okay, where do we have a hole? Do we feel like we have that internally? Do we need to move someone to fill that? I think that it's a bit of a stretch to say, oh, because they've hired these coaches to the major league staff, that means we're keeping all of our prospects. There's a lot of other factors that are going to come into play. Who's kept, who's traded. And I think too, one other factor here when you talk about is it's also a lot cheaper to hire minor league coaches to your major league staff than it is to go out and hire a bunch of established major league coaches who will command higher salaries. So there is a financial component here too. We talk about all the benefits and why they did it and why it's smart from a baseball situation, but there's also that financial component. It's not like going out and hiring a pitching coach with 20 years of experience who's, super well regarded. Not that that's a position that they would hire for with Niebla, but just that concept of, oh, we're hiring these established big league coaches. It's cheaper to elevate guys already in your own organization. So there's that aspect of it too. It's not solely just a matter of player development.
And I want to get some kind of more roster questions. One more on the coaching staff. No more offensive coordinator. They have a hitting coach again.
Yeah.
And one of the established guys, now he was assistant hitting coach, but been around for, I think it's like 48 or 42 years, something like that, in professional baseball. Seems very highly regarded. If Terry Francona signs off on you, that probably means something. You got anything on Victor Rodriguez through the years? Have you heard much about him? Obviously, Shildt has known him for a long time and thinks highly of him and says everybody that's worked with him just raves about him. But have you come across anything through the years about him, his impact, whether it be in Boston or Cleveland?
Yeah, I think it's more just generally, positive reviews. I think one of the things you look at is he has helped younger hitters get better. You go back to Cleveland, Andres Jimenez and Ahmed Rosario were two prospects who came over in the Mets trade, and there were questions about their bats, and he was able to help them be productive. Andres Jimenez turned into an MVP candidate one year. Rosario had some ups and downs, but there were some good years offensively in there, and I think that's something that we've seen with the Padres is they've had some times trouble helping younger players get acclimated to the major leagues. A lot of it's because they rush them. But anytime you have a hitting coach who has a track record of helping those younger guys get better, and he's also dealt with, star personality types in Boston. Again, I just think you have someone who's really well-rounded, really well-respected in the game. You look at the Guardians offense, it was very, very contact heavy. One could argue to the point that it was too contact heavy. But I think that was more of a roster construction issue than a hitting instruction issue. And I do think, look, we've all seen this is a team that their situational hitting and their ability to kind of check down and just focus on making contact and high leverage spots last year was really, really, really lacking. And look, the players even called it out. Juan Soto called it out. So having a coach in there who, can help these guys focus on making a little more contact in certain situations should only benefit them.
I think what also drove people nuts was Trent Grisham and Jake Cronenworth staring at 94 right down the middle.
Yes, and some of that is Trent Grisham just not being a major league caliber hitter of a starter on a contending team, and Jake Cronenworth has just regressed. And I think that look, Grisham has battled approach issues and swing issues for a while. Some of that is just lack of confidence in his swing. Cronenworth, yeah, there were some approach issues there. I remember talking to some Padres officials, even early last year, who were really frustrated by the at-bats that their guys were taking. So again, we'll see how the approach changes, maybe emphasizing contact a little more, maybe early contact and counts, contact earlier in counts, I should say. We'll see what they do, but there's no question that change should be good here, and we'll just see how it unfolds.
Yeah, because it seemed like, especially when I started covering them in 2019, and in the years that followed, it seemed like there was an emphasis on more discernible at bats and having a more discernible eye at the plate, taking more pitches,
Yeah.
shrinking the strike zone. And it almost felt like they overcorrected in the last year or two, where, Juan Soto's his own animal, but taking him apart, just too many guys like looking for the perfect pitch. And you could look at some of the first pitch numbers and that sort of thing, and just saying like, man, there's a lot of really, like, I don't know if you're going to see a better offering than that, and like a lot of really hittable pitches that seem to be passing by. And I just wonder if, like, trying to find that sweet spot between not being dumb and reckless at the plate, but also identifying your pitch and, not letting those opportunities go by, which is a really easy thing for an idiot like me to say, who's never been in that position before. But it seems to just kind of be the struggle, is like finding that, happy medium.
Yeah, and I think, you go back to, I started covering the Padres officially as a full-time reporter in 2015, and before that I'd seen the team a ton growing up in San Diego. I mean, there were guys who just could not hit to save their lives. It was bad approaches, especially late game situations. And Jace Tingler got a lot of heat, and some of it was deserved. But one of the things that was noticeable beginning in 2020 and 2021, they were having quality at bats late in games, which was revelatory. That never used to happen for the Padres. And we saw it with how many comeback wins they had. I mean, this was a team that for a decade plus, if they were down 2-0 in the second inning, the game was over. They had no shot of coming back from that. I think we saw them hit the right stride in 2020, 2021 in terms of, we're being disciplined, we're not chasing, but we're hitting pitches that are, that we should be attacking. They kind of got away from that a little bit in 2022, although again, they did a good enough job, especially late in the year and in the postseason. But we really saw it fall apart last year. You talk about letting hittable pitches go by, and then when they were swinging, it was way too much, all or nothing type swings, the selfish type of swing where I'm trying to win the game right here, as opposed to, hey, string a few hits together, put the bat on the ball, like one out, runner on third, just put the ball in play. We don't need a home run here. So I think both the approach from a aggressiveness standpoint and an approach from a quality of swing standpoint and what you're trying to do at the plate when you do take the bat off your shoulder needed to change. And again, new hitting coach comes very highly regarded. You don't get universal praise in this game if you haven't done a good job. There's a lot of people out there who have a lot of bad things to say about people. So when you have good reviews across the board, it's a good sign. But we have to see how it plays out in practice.
All right, so what do they do with the rest of this roster? Lauren is wondering, is there anyone in the upper minors who could fill the Padres' immediate roster need? If not, could the Padres bring back someone like Myers or Profar? Myers, man. Or even go get a Bellinger on the cheap. I don't know if you're going to see the words Bellinger and cheap used in the same sentence once that headline drops. Profar, for whatever reason, when he came back in September, they started playing better. I struggle to see Will Myers, although, I think a lot of fans would be excited about that and would probably be welcome within the clubhouse. Any shot that they land Cody Bellinger at all?
No.
Okay.
He wants $200 million. Someone's probably going to give it to him. So no,
Okay.
that's not happening. Yeah, I think with regards to if there's anyone in the upper minors that can fill their outfield holes on opening day, the answer is no. They have a guy like Jacob Marcy who
Preller tried to plant the Jacob Marcy seed when he spoke a little bit earlier this offseason.
And Marcy does some good things. He has a good eye for the strike zone, gets on base. He certainly is a solid defender in center field. The pure hitting ability is still a question. He hit well in the Arizona Fall League, which is good to see, but you have to remember the pitching in the Fall League is pretty terrible, and it has been the last few years. I think you feel, and even if you do believe in him, he's a second half call-up guy. He's not ready on opening day. So I think if they're the Padres, you do look at some of those, 1 year veteran type of holdover options to give him, give Marcy another year. And if you are trying to move Graham Pauley and Jackson Merrill to the outfield, they need a full year of reps in the minor leagues before they're going to be ready to do that in the major leagues. So there's not a lot of center field options left out there, kind of 1 year holdover types. Harrison Bader just signed.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean you try and move Fernando Tatis to center field and go do something like Jorge Soler and right, Eddie Rosario on left on short 1 or 2 year deals? Maybe. I think that would be an option. I'll say this for Jurickson Profar. When he was with the Padres, he always was kind of like that X factor. The numbers weren't always great, but he seemed to do things, smart heads up play, scoring from second base, an outfield assist, a really quality at bat in a good spot. So, you could bring him back. I think for whatever reason, he fits in San Diego better than anywhere else. But given the lack of center field options, they're going to have to get creative, whether it's a trade somewhere or maybe they move Tatis out there and see what he can do and sign a couple of veteran holdovers for the corners, because there's no one in the upper minors right now where you say, oh, yeah, they're ready for opening day.
Yeah, I struggle to figure out where they go from here. What sense do you get? I think everybody's trying to figure out the math of like what they have to work with, to stay under the tax. I think for a while we thought, 40 or 50, but really like when you get into like the tax numbers, it's closer to like what 25 or 30 maybe that they have, at their expense at this point. And so, if you bring in a veteran bat on like a 15 million, what did Bader get? Like 12 million, if you want like a guy, and you're having to pay him like 15, 17 million or somewhere thereabouts, then, you're really kind of cutting into your resources, which makes it difficult. A guy that I don't know what you think, but I feel like Rhys Hoskins could be an interesting option at first base.
Yep.
But then is there what's the word? A move that goes along with that involves a Ha-Sung Kim or a Jay Cronenworth that brings you back an outfielder? Because at some point, like you might bring Rhys Hoskins, and maybe he's an everyday first baseman, gets over the ACL tear, and does close to what he was doing in Philly, which would certainly be an upgrade. But you still don't have two outfielders.
Yeah, look, I think Rhys Hoskins would be a great addition to the Padres, provided he's healthy, but there's no place for him. And that's where really the Padres need to move Jake Cronenworth. The issue is the money he's due, there's not going to be many takers. They're going to have to kick in a lot of money and maybe even a good prospect. And it becomes a point of, okay, well, if we're giving away this much just to get him off the team, does it become worth it? So they're in a little bit of a bind. I don't think adding an infielder is the right move at this stage. If they can move Cronenworth, great. You don't want him to open as your opening day first baseman in 2024, but they might be forced into it. The little bit of money you have, you at least have the bodies in the rotation. Again, it's not what you want, but could you live with Darvish, Musgrove? Do two of King, Brito, and Vasquez, are they serviceable? Avila, Matt Waldron, when he came out last year at the end of the year and upped his knuckleball usage, was actually pretty good at the end of the year. Of those five, can you find three usable starting pitchers and cycle some guys in? Possibly. They just don't physically have the bodies in the outfield. I mean, the guys that right now are in the organization that you're looking at as your opening day center fielder and left fielders are guys that you don't want on a major league roster. You prefer them to be AAA depth. So realistically, that's where their money needs to be spent. It's in the outfield. And again, with no real center fielder on the market, their options are limited. So if they can move Jake Cronenworth, that would certainly help a lot of things. I just don't know how much of a market there is for him.
Alfredo's wondering if they can move Jake Cronenworth to the outfield.
And that's sort of the interesting debate. Could Jake Cronenworth be a serviceable left fielder? He's a good enough athlete that maybe you move him into left. At the same time, the value that Jake Cronenworth gives you is as a Gold Glove caliber second baseman who hits at, an average to slightly above level for a second baseman. He's not going to hit enough to cross the threshold of a first division first baseman. He's not going to hit enough to cross the threshold of a first division left fielder. And you also talk about, while he's a good athlete, it takes hundreds, thousands of reps to be a major league caliber defender at any one position. And, there would probably be some ugliness early. So if you say, okay, we'd have to live through the growing pains of him learning to play a new position on top of he's not going to hit enough to profile for it. Is it worth it? You might at that point just say, well, if we know we're not going to get enough bat to profile, we should at least leave him at the position we know he can play, which is first base. So is it an option? Yes. Again, they don't have good options here. The best option is to trade him, get that contract off the books, but there's just not a lot of chance that's going to happen.
Yeah. It's a tough spot that they find themselves in, and a lot of spots to fill, not a whole lot of money to do it with, and some hard decisions to be made. Anything you want to plug, podcast wise, website wise? I mean, check out the Matsui Go piece, obviously, to get to know those guys a little bit more. I think that just dropped. Was that yesterday that dropped?
Yeah.
Anything else fans, especially Padres fans, should check out or be on the lookout for?
Yeah, absolutely. We're currently doing our top 10 prospects podcast series, and the Padres episode just dropped today, actually. So go
Perfect
on
timing.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can check it on our website, baseballamerica.com. Listen in. Jeff Sanders of the San Diego Union Tribune
Nice.
joined me. We talked about the Padres farm system, its strengths, the weaknesses, and just organizationally what the outlook is. We're rolling through all the other teams as well. Dodgers dropped right before Christmas, I believe. Just recorded Rockies. So you can listen in on the rest of the NL West and kind of figure out where the Padres fit future wise, because we know present with the Dodgers spending ungodly sums of money, the Diamondbacks, the defending National League champions. The present is a little shaky right now, but yeah, you can see where they stack up future wise and what's to come.
Definitely going to check that out. Thanks so much, Kyle. Appreciate it as always. You're the best, and enjoy the rest of the offseason. I'm sure we'll catch up with you soon.
Sounds good, Darnay. Always a pleasure.